Hey, Ghost Machine fans, this one's for you.
Welcome to the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast, episode 41. We are deep in the midst of a blizzard, but don't worry, not the type that has a creature that's hunting us. It's time for a nice and toasty deep dive back into Ghost Machine's horror universe. Hyde Street. I am Snoggle, also known as Becky, and as usual, I am joined by my very special friend, Nick. How does it feel to be walking back down the road of the strange and unknowable?
Well, right now, as I walk down Hyde Street, I do so with the assist of an old walker, because as I'll briefly let the Ghost Machine fans know, Bruce and I recently attended a trampoline park at our local recreational center, and I injured myself at that trampoline park. So I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be walking down Hyde Street. I'd be going real slow. But I'm really excited to be back and talking about this universe and these creators again. This episode will air on Wednesday, January 8th. It's our second one to air in 2025. How's that feel, Snoggle?
It feels great.
Yeah? Do you have any New Year's resolutions?
I mean, I'm just making some slight changes. I guess I'm doing dry January.
Well, if the weather holds up, it's going to be easy to do that, because right now we have about 3.5, 4 feet of snow outside our windows. And that's not really that. It is about 2 feet, though, and that's a whole lot for us around here in this winter apocalypse. 2025 Cincinnati edition that we are experiencing. So remember that on today, January 8th, 2025, when you go to your local comic book store, the releases are twofold. It's Geiger number 10. There's 3 covers you can get. That's also the one that features Dylan Dietrich on one of those covers. He was the winner of the Kubert School Scholarship. And then also Hornsby and Halo number 1's second printing is going to be in stores the day this episode releases. But we have some shout-outs. As usual, we have an interesting trio of shout-outs this time. The 3 amigos of Mezco, you could call them. It's REDEMER_STUDIOZ, Redeemer_Studios. Then My Sick Figs, it's just like it sounds, MYSICKFIGS. And Grimy Photos. I especially like that username choice. It's GRIMEYPHOTOS. All 3 of those creators are toy photography enthusiasts who have collaborated with us recently using the Mezco Junkyard Joe figure. Done some really cool stuff. You should go check them out. One of them had like cool little squibs, like bullet hits that they added to some scenes that they did. And the Grimy Photos one, that one was a little animated. Like Joe kind of takes a step. It's pretty neat. So check all those out. And it is something that I wanted to throw out there, that as a result of that, we've gotten some new followers on the Instagram that have found us because of collaborating with action figure people per se. And that means that because of this action figure, hopefully more people are going to end up reading Ghost Machine comics, which is pretty cool.
Agreed.
But no more playing with dolls, though, because Snoggle's in the newsroom.
I am in the newsroom. Okay, excellent news. Gary Frank recently announced his return to the Geiger ongoing series in issue 10. He also alluded to the Northerner appearing a lot more in the upcoming pages of the series after appearing fully on the last page of Redcoat number 8, as well as in another cameo alluding to time travel in the epilogue of Geiger number 9. Very, very exciting. Yay! The Northerner.
the Northerner. He's super cool. Around here, we theorize that he is a time traveler. If you want to get a rundown of all of the appearances, quote unquote, that he has or hasn't had, depending on what side of the collectible fence you lie, we did a reel on our Instagram very recently, just a couple of days ago. So you'll see it in there for early January. That is us pulling up our character database file on the Northerner. And he's actually cameoed like 5 or 6 times up until this point. But the page that Gary's referring to is essentially a full single splash page done by Brian Hitch at the end of Redcoat 8. And it's got his name and he's got dialogue, and it's still only one page though, which a lot of people feel like is a cameo. And I heard a rumor that Jeff did an interview on another podcast recently and mentioned that his real full first appearance was still coming in like Redcoat 11 or Redcoat 10 or something like that. But when we posted that reel, also Snoggle, I don't know if you saw it, but on Facebook, Brian responded about how they have really big plans for the Northerner. And, you know, they haven't said that he's getting his own series, but he has his own logo. Everybody wants him to have his own series. And either way, he's going to appear a lot more, I think, in at least Redcoat and Geiger in 2025, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a good year. I can feel it.
Gonna be a good year. I think so. No resolutions where we're about to walk down. Because by the time that you realize you need to resolve what you did wrong, you're stuck. You can't get out. And that's because we're going back down to Hyde Street with the second issue in the series. You seem particularly enthused about this one.
Well, you know, I had like a comic book reading day recently where I feel like I just read several books in a row. And then I read an actual book. And I was in a creative mood, and I just think the story, it excites me for like where it's headed. The first one was cool. The second one, you're like, ooh, this is going to be good.
Absolutely. And we're not going to spoil any of it. If we go any further, I'm going to want to talk about it more. So the only thing that we can talk about ahead of time are the covers for this bad boy. So the very first one of those is by the folks that do the book too, right? It's by Yvonne and Danny Mickey on inks. Remember that Danny is Yvonne's dedicated inker, and Brad Anderson did the colors. Did you catch what this cover was an homage to? So it's Pranky and the police officer sitting in a malt shop, but then they're surrounded by flames. And it's an homage to a Norman Rockwell painting. Have you ever seen that Norman Rockwell painting of the old man?
Flames?
No, but the two of them sitting in the malt shop. It's supposed to be that setting.
No, I think that's awesome. Maybe it was the evilness of the flames and everything that threw me off a smidgen.
Yeah, and definitely the dog on the bottom there just chewing on an arm.
Yeah, I love it.
Interesting. Yeah, really, really awesome. And Brad's colors really bring the fire out of it. So that's the A cover. That's a standard cover. All these you could get in equal increments at your local comic book shop. The B cover I thought was really cool, even though we don't see this character, albeit on 1 or 2 panels in this issue. He's my favorite character in Hyde Street. Did you get a chance to see that one with X-Ray on there?
I think because of the color usage, the green like really popped.
Yeah, and I loved how they chose a green logo for the Hyde Street sign that kind of echoes that for this particular issue. And this one was drawn by Peter Snabier of Hornsby and Halo fame. Although, even though on Hornsby and Halo, John Cleese does the colors, Brad Anderson did the colors for this particular cover. And then there's one more. This one's pretty cool. It's another homage cover that a lot of people have heard of. You know, it's like a iconic painting. And this one is one by Germán Peralta. We've seen him do some other covers as well. And
it's the Scream.
It is the scream. It's the famous scream. Do you know, Ghost Machine fans, we're talking about that painting where it's like the bald person with the face and they've got their hands over their ears. Do you know why that person has their hands over their ears in that painting, Snoggle?
No.
It's because they're not actually screaming. They are trying to stop from hearing the scream, although it's meant to like deceive you into making it look like they're the ones screaming. But in this case, it's Pranky screaming, and he almost reminds me more of like Kevin McAllister a little bit, and with his scream here. But he's got a bloodied knife, and 2 adults are down nearby, which is fitting considering now, after reading this issue, we have a much more detailed explanation about how he works and what he's trying to accomplish on Hyde Street.
No, I really love it. No, I actually, my favorite color was the sea cover.
Yeah, so you like the homage? You thought that was neat?
I think it looks awesome.
All right. Well, now you know your 3 options when you go to the local comic book store to pick this book up, which means that we have to take a moment and we have to pause, because if you haven't read this, you absolutely should not listen to the remainder of the episode. What you should do is run out to your local comic book store, grab that book. We will pause. We will wait for you here, and we will be here when you get back, won't we, Snoggle?
We will.
We will. And so, this is the official spoiler pause for Hyde Street number 2. Now that we're in it to win it, we've opened up our books, we're ready to read, we're ready to spoil. Snoggle, give us the creator roll call on this joint.
Well, the creator roll call for Hyde Street number 2. This book was created by Jeff Johns and Ivan Reese. The inker was Danny Mickey. Colorist Brad Anderson, and of course, our king of letters, Rob Lee.
Super great. There's a lot to take in here, but suffice it to say that this is the origin issue of one of the 2 main characters in Hyde Street so far. I was going to say one of the 2 protagonists, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate to refer to Mr. X-Ray and Pranky as protagonists in anybody's story, really.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is about Pranky, which is great because up until this point, what do we know? What do we know about Pranky before reading this book?
He's an evil little Cub Scout. Okay. I think it's perfect. You know, the very first panel lets us know, like, hey, you're about to get a Pranky story. It's not like a snippet in the middle or whatnot, but it starts with, you're the only one who didn't earn their badge, Pip. And like, I think we just get to see him in such a different light at this very beginning, where I almost, of course, being a boy mom myself, I'm like, aw, poor Pip. But I find it quite funny that at the beginning of his origin story that we're really getting, it's about him not getting a badge, and then he's obsessed with getting badges on Hyde Street. So really lovely storytelling from the very beginning here.
And it's good that you bring that up, because as a reminder, what you're referring to is that when he takes a victim on Hyde Street, it appears he gets a badge that somehow is representative of that victim in some symbolic way, just like a scout's badge would be. So it looks like he's out at a camp out, and we do get some like omniscient narrative about him that helps us understand, you know, he both has been a victim of circumstance, but he's also kind of like chaotic evil in nature too. So it's a double combo there.
Again, it's like the first 3 panels, me as a mother, I felt really bad for him. Like, he doesn't know how to tie. He obviously doesn't, did you ask your dad? He didn't. And, we know there's more to that story. And then all the other scouts make fun of him and call him a freak. And just so everybody knows, from me and Nick, who are avid in the scout community, that doesn't happen in our troop. I've not seen it really across the board. I was like, oh my gosh. Ooh.
Well, that leads us to a good point, though, which is that once we flip the page and get this awesome 2-page spread from Yvonne, we know that it's set in 1955. And I don't know what Cub Scout packs and stuff were like in 1955 compared
I guess that's true.
to now at all. But I do know that the world is much kinder to children and everyone nowadays than it was back then. But the whole splash page is they're burning tents and they're running away. But I love this little detail because really what the narrator is doing is telling us like, oh yeah, you couldn't tie a knot, but there are some things he could really do well, like start a fire, and he burns down the entire campground. But then in the corner of it all, there's the first time we see a badge, like what you said, and that badge, inside that badge is a tent and it's on fire. And then the next panel after that is the bear who gets the sausages out of the scoutmaster's bag, which was kind of funny. I mean, it probably, it's horrible, but like that was an interesting one. But then the badge is the bear, right? And then the next one after that has to do with him capsizing their canoe and drowning a bunch of them. And he gets a badge with 2 crossed canoes for that. So very early, you're starting to see that theme of his sense of accomplishment comes from these acts of vengeance or whatever you want to call them. And they physically manifest via Hyde Street.
I like the emotion pulling that we're getting here, even in, we've basically gone like 3 or 4 pages, right? So we see him doing these horrific things, and then it flashes to him being talked to by police officers. He's clearly gotten beat up by his dad. And like the cop's best thing is to stay out of trouble with your teachers. Then he won't, it's like they're victim blaming him. And they, from this environment that he's in, is like, why don't you join scouts? So, I mean, yeah, was he probably inherently evil? Yeah, but looks like there's a lot of nurture that led up to making his inner nature be pretty destructive.
And so we find out by what they're saying to him that his father's a World War II veteran of the Pacific Theater who lost an arm in a very brutal way. And, as there's some abuse that has come of that too. And yeah, it's pretty rough because you see that and you don't really see any darkness in that scene. You don't see that he did anything wrong. And when it cuts to the next scene that's in the classroom where they're going to dissect a pig, he doesn't seem evil at first to me either. Does he to you?
Mm-mm. They even make him look innocent a lot of times. Like when he said, "Is that a baby pig, Mr. Dewey?" The way like the eyes shine, got the pout face going on. I mean, he kind of looks adorable.
Yeah. And he says, why are we dissecting a young pig? So Ghost Machine fans, we're talking about this scene in the classroom where they're going to dissect a bunch of fetal pigs. And the teacher's like, it's because the organs are like humans. I think this was actually a thing back in the 50s. I mean, I know that to be true, but I don't know that this is commonly done anymore.
I dissected a pig.
Oh, you did? We did frogs.
We did both.
You did both? Oh, okay. Was it like this? Was it a little guy? Like this?
Yeah.
Did everybody get one, or was it just a group?
Everyone got a pig.
All right, so there you go. We did worms too. We dissected worms in mine, but there may have been pigs. I feel like I saw pigs or I smelled I have a memory of smelling formaldehyde. Yeah,
that smell was bad.
Like that. But Pranky wants to know Pip. Really, he's not Pranky yet. why are we dissecting a young pig instead of an old one that died naturally? And the whole reason is for efficiency, and you couldn't get that many of them in there and all that kind of stuff. Then you do see him take like the first turn where the teacher gives him, I mean, it's a relatively reasonable explanation. And Pip says, then I'd rather dissect you instead of a baby pig. That's when you start to kind of get that sense of dread. But we get pulled out of his origin back on Hyde Street in the present, right? Like as in current day.
Yeah. At present, they're at Bud's soda fountain.
Yeah. And this looks to be reminiscent of that A cover. That the scene that we're about to be walking into, because it's present day, but it's still a soda shop. And it does. Here's another thing too, that the narrator makes a point of saying that we hear a couple of times. I think it's in his bio at the end. And he says, I can't speak to the specific circumstances that brought him to Hyde Street. That's a story he's kept close. But like the rest of us who narrowly escaped the jaws of devourment, the scorekeeper gave this scout an offer he couldn't refuse. So one thing that we do appear to definitively know between that and the bio is that the residents of Hyde Street are people that got out of becoming victims somehow by becoming in service of the scorekeeper and doing this grandiose task.
And I like how they said, like, so he was in a prison of his own making, but he doesn't see it that way.
Right.
He's like, this is dope.
Yeah, he's happy.
Let me just kill all these people in crazy ways. Sold. I'm in. No notes. He said to the scorekeeper, no notes. I'll do it.
And in the end, we'll get to that, but in the end, he does actually essentially explain the specific reason that he's doing things in the way that he's doing them.
So when he walks in and he's talking to this guy, Bud, do you think that is one of the citizens?
So the way I see this is that because of who the police officer is and what we find out that he did, he has now stumbled upon Hyde Street. Like he's tipped the karma box too far in the bad side, and the scales have led him here. So I think that Bud is either like part of Hyde Street. I don't think that he's a resident like Pranky, because he's not the one that's like pulling the agenda here. But he's either like a magical projection, because he definitely has like qualities that are meant to just be creepy. Like he's smoking the whole time inside modern day in a malt shop that's really for kids, but he's smoking a cigarette.
I mean, he just looks creepy, don't you think?
The reason that I was saying that is because since he's saying it was, like it actually was this named the same place, and then that one panel where he's like, funny, that's my name. To me, that's like it's like a peek around the fourth wall a little bit, saying to the reader, being like, hey, yeah, this is a trap for this guy. So Pranky mouths off to him, which is obviously, in retrospect, intentional. He wants to be taken away by the cop. And I didn't get any sense of that. Like, did you get a sense that the cop was evil? Because we do get this one little exposition about him. It says, here sits Officer Hank Downs, a man who believes power equals respect, though he'll soon learn that there's always a higher authority to answer to.
I didn't at first, I think, is the easier way to say it. And then we can go through the panel. But the moment when he says, don't test my patience, kid, respect the badge. And he also says, we make the rules. We decide what's right. And we keep things in line. Like, there's part of him that's on a bit of a power trip there.
Yeah, and I think they're alluding to that too. But really, he puts him in the car and he says he's going to take him back to his teachers. And then they have some back and forth. And it's like, well, it looks like he's driving him away from the city. So who knows what he really was intending to do. But Then you start to hear this noise in the trunk of the car. I like the letters from Rob because they look like they're bouncing on the road.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so Pranky Pip is hearing something from in there, and I really like how it's innocent for a little bit, right? Because he's
It's
like, "Did you
innocent
hear
at
that?"
first. I think
Yeah,
something's in the trunk or someone, but you get the hint of evil when he says, "Who'd you put in there?"
yeah, and that's also when you start to see that his face colored more dark and his eye being dark again, like it was when the cop first came into the part of the malt shop too. So it looks like there's actually one panel or two panels. One of them says help. The other one says I need to get to the hospital, and it's from inside the trunk. And this is really great where, like, if you're reading panel to panel, the pacing is awesome because he gets all the way to pulling over and he opens it up and there's nobody in there. And it's like, what the heck is going on? Like, what is he doing? Like, at this point, even though I thought the cop was a power hungry jerk, I was like, is this guy, what did he do that was wrong? You know, why is Pranky doing this? Are they on Hyde Street or are they not? But then as you get those glimpses, like there's this one more panel where after he says he can hear ghosts, he says to the cop from the back seat, I can make you hear them too. He's got those black evil eyes again. So that's when I thought, okay, this is going to take a turn, which it really quickly does, right?
Really quickly, he's like, "Would you like to see them, officer?" And it's obviously not an actual choice question.
Yeah. But what the reason is it's because he's about to give him a vision of what, essentially.
The very horrific crash.
Well, a crash that did occur in reality, and that he's going to make him relive, because what it appears is that he, in the past, crashed into this person, this pregnant woman's car intentionally, and killed her due to some complicated things that happened between the two of them, and it's because ultimately he's a super evil dude. Like he's a super evil dude. And I really love the look on Pip's face when Pip realizes who he is. And he says, the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run, the Connecticut River Valley Killer, so many others. And now you, the South Haven Strangler. And he's just got this funny little smirk on his face like, man, you guys are all the same. I just really thought that was funny.
I will say that I was a smidgen shocked by this scene. Like he sees the lady and he recognizes the lady and literally strangles her. I don't know. And then he looks crazy. And it's so interesting. I think one of the things that's interesting to me is Pranky obviously in this environment became a form of a serial killer, right? Like we saw how he killed the granny. Although she was a poison lady, I get it, but he did roll her over with that was pretty gross. But it's like, let me guess, mommy slapped you around for wetting the bed and daddy never showed up. It's interesting that he would like torture someone with the similar backstory of like being misused and abused. Like that also happened to him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like he's projecting it to an extent, for sure. It's interesting because we're essentially talking about evil meeting evil here. Because the officer who admits that he's the serial killer in the process of strangling Pranky to death, and at the same time, like he's just seeing this crazy stuff. Like Pranky just made him relive this, even though, so he knows it's not reality at that point. either in some way, right? Because if he looks back, then that other car is or isn't there, but he's still amidst it is more concerned with killing him to end everything that he's hearing. And he strangles him and actually thinks that he's got him despite all that. And then we do see that the vehicle is indeed truly damaged, because when it cuts to this cabin in the woods where he's got Pranky on a sheet on the ground, like he's gonna go bury him or whatever, the vehicle is parked there and there's like exhaust coming out of it and it's damaged in the front. So like that did occur to that. And then you see this is basically his serial killer evil guy cabin. He's got a wall of all the IDs of people that I guess he's killed. Those are his trophies. And
he's also singing to himself, by the way.
Yeah,
he's like,
yeah. It's only musical notes, right?
Yeah, he's humming.
Yeah, that makes you wonder, because maybe just trying to emphasize the triviality of the moment for him, or whatever, how calm he is. And then Pranky arises and says, I forgot to mention. Oh, wait.
Well, first.
There you go. Yeah, you go.
There's a big, he's like just doing his own thing, really happy in his kill cabin. And we see, and I love the letters here. Officer Hank Downs. Obviously another officer yelling. And then we see, oh man, I just think he looks so scary here. Cause like, if at this point, even though this guy's a serial killer, like you strangled this kid, you had him in a sheet, and then he woke up. He says, I forgot to mention, I already called them about your mother's old cabin. I told them everything you've done. And then he's surrounded by cops.
Surrounded by cops that are outside, and he's freaking out. It's super surreal, right? Because he's seen so many different crazy things in the last however much period of time. And he brings it full circle, though, to one of the first things mentioned in the issue about Pranky, because Pranky's torturing him by saying, like, you're going to have to face all the families of those victims and all this stuff. Because, there's a wall of IDs of all the people that he killed. Like, it's like, those are the trophies this guy keeps. And he says, but there's another way out, something that only folks like you should consider. My father never taught me, so I had to teach myself. And he starts to make a knot. And he says, it's my favorite knot. All you have to do is slip it on. I'll do the rest.
Oh my gosh. And how, like, here's like, when I first read this, like, I already knew where he was going when he started to, get that rope. I was like, ooh. But when you turn this page and he's like covered in blood, and I love just how the blood's kind of like orangey, the light's hitting him a certain way. He looks like a zombie. I mean, he looks like a straight up monster. The eyes, like everything. Oh my gosh, that would be horrifying. And in conclusion, I love this direction. So that's horrifying. Imagine even you're a serial killer. You've strangled a ton of people. You've buried them in your woods. You turn around and see that. I love the fact that you see genuine fear on this guy's face, and he shoots Pranky over and over again, which obviously doesn't affect him. And then we get this awesome, like with the all white in the background of him having the bullets and covered in blood. Oh, it pops. Like, I'm not usually a gore person, but I'm like, oh, that's sweet.
And so it's that and he holds the gun up to his head, and then we get this great gunshot and laughter from Rob. Because the laughter is obviously Pranky laughing after the police officer shoots himself. And then it cuts all the way back to Bud's malt shop. And I love this line. I didn't think I'd ever like dissecting pigs, but I don't mind it after all. That's like, I that's pretty cool. I liked that a lot.
Deliveries 18,293.
Yeah, and to your point about what's Bud's role in here, when he asks for another drink, he barks at Bud, and the speech bubble switches to this red thing, and he says, "Make it snappy, Bud, or else I'll have you clean out my treehouse again." So maybe Bud is a resident, and maybe based on the dynamics that happen between different residents of Hyde Street, sometimes people can push other people around. But then he gets those eyes that are pulling, not the X-ray eyes, but the eyes that pull you away towards the scorekeeper. We've seen this happen to Mr. X-ray before too.
Yes, I love the next page where I don't want to leave Hyde Street. And it's so cool because it kind of looks like the iris of an eye, like that I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's the idea, because we see his eyes go like twirly, and then he's in that falling, and he's being pulled back to the scorekeeper, and he asks him, "What's the big idea?" And it's pretty awesome that the scorekeeper is decorating a Christmas tree, based on when this issue came out. I thought that was pretty fun too. And then we learned something more though about what's going on here, right? Because what we learn is that the reason he's not following the rules is because he's trying to kill as many people. He's trying to get as many deliveries as he can, as fast as he can, because he wants to prevent something from happening. So as they're going back and forth, the point that the scorekeeper makes to him is that the first person that interacts with somebody is supposed to be the one that can take them or whatever, and Pranky breaks that rule, which gets a lot of complaints about him. But Pranky's like, I don't care, because what the rule says is that if you deliver 10,000 souls, and I can choose to leave Hyde Street, keyword there being choose. So don't try to get me to go anywhere. What should it matter to you how these bad guys get to you anyway? And so what he's saying is that if he's the one that gets all the souls, and he chooses not to leave, then he also prevents everyone else from doing so as well. And he gets to keep doing it and tormenting everyone, because no one else will ever be able to reach the quota which he has almost doubled, because he doesn't want to go anywhere and he wants everybody else to be screwed.
And we do know that there are some others who see a decent amount of kill time, right? Like, I think Miss Goodbody had 8,000 plus. I think some of them are kind of up there too. We don't know how long everyone's been doing it either. Not to stand up for him. I just think he's like, why do you care? I just want to, how does this mess up what we're doing? Just let me kill as many people as I want to kill.
Miss Goodbody is the next closest, but he's the only one who has hit the quota, and what they're emphasizing is that he is not choosing to leave, even though he has hit the quota, because the presumption is that the whole reason you do it would be to choose to leave. But he wants what we do definitely get very, very clearly is that the scorekeeper is saying that the reason he doesn't want him to do this is because there's a delicate balance in place, which, means that if he wants the first person to interact with somebody who steps onto High Street to be the one that has the opportunity to damn them or whatever it is, that there's some strategic arranging there, which makes sense, because the victim in Devour is a representation of, like the vanity or whatever. And that's why she might have been targeted like by that or whatever it may be. And like we saw in the first one that there was like a doctor, an evil doctor that tries to give people plastic surgery and they didn't want it anymore. And
that's why he keeps on sending pranky serial killers.
Yeah, I do get a kick out of how he's like, enough with the serial killers, they're too easy. He's definitely done with that. But the scorekeeper wants him to go make peace with Mr. X-Ray. And then we do get one panel with Xavier Ray after the scorekeeper puts an ornament on his tree that looks just like the cop that he just got the soul of. Did you notice too that the character from Devour is there, and the bulldozer, so that's that woman, and there's also another one hanging. Below that, Ghost Machine fans, on the last panel of the book, before the preview for number 3's cover, you got Mr. X-Ray there, referencing Christmas time. Yes, Christmas time, the season for forgiveness and goodwill toward your fellow man. And then it says next, Santa Claus is coming to town. And this is a pretty serious cover for a comic book for Hyde Street number 3 here. That's got a little preview. Did you see some of the detail in there?
Yeah.
This is not approved by the Comics Code.
I think there's a rib cage around the tree.
There's a ribcage around the tree. There's a decapitated Santa Claus. There's 2 heads of 2 presumably decapitated elves. That evil Frank guy is holding an elk head, which is the new like star to the top of the tree. Like, this is a pretty dark cover. Like, that's pretty rough, man. Like, I really dug it. We made a fun video imitating it that I let my 9-year-old be in. So I can't knock it being that graphic, but yeah, that's a pretty rough one. I think it's awesome, but that's for number 3, which
I think what's so funny is then we turn the page and you get the Rockefellers number 2 preview and it's all wholesome.
Yeah, they did have some good Christmas marketing going on. This issue, number 3, has yet to come out. It's about to come out in January. It was pushed out a little bit, but I really enjoyed it. I liked learning more about Pranky to an extent. There were just a couple of things in his bio. 3 real quick things. 1, it points out that when he became estranged from his dad initially, he went looking for his mom. So that was important to him, although he was never able to find her. It also points out that Pranky damned his teacher, Mr. Dewey, by tricking him into dissecting his own body. And if you go back to that scene with the pig, that teacher's name is Mr. Dewey. So that's another one where it's like, well, in that moment, how did he become a victim? Like, if he was really Pranky's teacher. So that's an interesting one. I also just really like the last sentence, which says he is an avid comic book reader. Most of the bios have one funny thing at the end, I've found.
I love it.
So this week's listener mail comes from Andy S. He's listened to the show and supported us for quite some time, and it is great to hear from him again. And he sent us a recorded message. So we are going to go ahead and play that recorded message for you all right now.
Hey, Nick and Becky, this one's for you. This is Andy. I'm listening in Pennsylvania. I have a question and I have a suggestion. My question is in regards to Zig Zag's biography page in Geiger number 9. The biography lists his hair as black with white stripes, but I see it as white with black stripes. Would you care to weigh in on this? Is this an either potato argument? Is this part of his mutation? Let me know what you think. And my suggestion, is that I also see in the back of Ghost Machine books a blurb for the next issue. Actually, it's more than a blurb. We get a full page, often next issue's cover. So my request is that listeners get a blurb for next episode's deep dive. Give us a heads up so we can be sure we're caught up and ready to deep dive with you. Keep up the great work, and I'll keep listening to the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast.
Andy, you're the man.
No, that was like awesome.
That was awesome. When I first heard that, and you said that way, Andy, in the beginning, and then at the end, that really made me smile, man. So thanks a lot for all your support for so long. What do you think of the? Well, that's a serious question there. You know, I thought about Googling this to have like a biologist's answer to whether or not zebras are white with black stripes or black with white stripes, but I thought that would kind of ruin it. So I think they're white with black stripes.
You're not gonna like my answer.
Well, you know the answer? You really know a good answer? What's the answer?
Zebras their skin is black, so they're black and they have white stripes.
Okay, so that means their hair is black and white, or their hair is usually just black, right?
No,
It's both.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Well, there you go, Andy. Boom, straight from the Snoggle's mouth. There you go. Now, what did you think of the suggestion?
Straight from the Snoggle's mouth. I really like that suggestion, actually.
Yeah, I did too. And I think that makes a lot of sense. But in this case, we absolutely will begin this tradition and let you know that the next episode is going to be our deep dive into Geiger number 8. Excited about that. It's another one of those Paul Pelletier issues. And it's important that we get caught up with Geiger because we're not necessarily behind, but as we mentioned on the day that this episode airs, number 10 is coming out, and that's when Gary is retaking the helm of the book. So we're super excited about that as well. So thank you so much for getting a hold of us. Andy, thank you for your support.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Andy.
Did you have anything else for this episode before we have to go back out to the front yard with dual snow shovels and clear it on out?
No, I am really, I know I feel like I said this last time, but I am very, very excited for everything we're about to get in 2025.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight on the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast.